Welcome everyone to today's podcast. My name is Paul. I'm a happy member of Cocaine Anonymous, and I'm really pleased to say we've been joined by Joe.
Hi Paul, thanks for inviting me. My name's Joe, I'm an addict.
Good stuff, good stuff. Welcome everyone. So today Joe is going to share his experience, strength and hope with us. So without further ado, I'm just going to hand the floor over to you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Like I said, my name's Joe, I'm an addict. Thank you for inviting me to do this. I'm going to just share for a short period in the hope that if anyone listens to this, they might get a bit of identification. I'll try and say very simply what it was like for me, what happened to me, and what it's like now. So very simply, my drug using, like most people's, I think, was good for a period, then not very good at all, and then an absolute nightmare. Now, there's a couple of, here in Cocaine Anonymous, we talk about what makes as an addict, right? And normally there's two kind of questions that we need to answer, okay? Now the first one of those questions is, when I use, do I have any control over the amount I take? Right? Now that question to me, no, I don't have any control over the amount I take. Now, that's not to say every time I use drugs, I instantly lost all control. That's not true. There were some periods where it looked like I had a little bit of control over what was going on. But on the whole, generally speaking, from the first time I took a mind-altering substance in my early teens, I never, generally speaking, I couldn't control the amount I took. And things, more drugs got taken than was the original plan. Benders went on longer in the beginning. And towards the end, as the drugs I used changed, and I used so-called hard drugs, heroin and crack cocaine. I used them daily. There was no control of any kind, nor the illusion of any kind of control. The second question is, if when I want to stop, when I really, really want to stop, can I quit entirely, right? And this is I can stop. I can stop using drugs. With sufficient consequences, I can make a decision. I can get off the drugs I'm taking, and I can stay off them for a period of time. But my experience has been that if nothing changed in that period of time, a time and a place came and I ended up picking them up again. Okay, now when I took my first mind-altering substance, I didn't have a lot going on in my life. I had a very happy childhood. I had a fantastic mother. I had a dad who wasn't around much, but he's a good man. He wasn't cruel. He had some issues of his own. Yeah, so I was a happy kid. So I don't think there's no kind of reason why what happened to me happened to me. When I first took a drug, I really enjoyed it. It gave me some identity and gave my life a bit of purpose. And I just kept taking them. And I just kept taking them and taking them and taking them. And I went through a kind of fairly stereotypical kind of route. You know, it was cannabis, then ecstasy, and then later on hard drugs. And as I said before, that first bit, when I take it, do I have any control over the amount I take? That's always been there. But the second bit, and arguably the most significant part of the two questions, it wasn't until my early 20s that I started trying to stop. Okay. And the reason I started trying to stop was because my life was a disaster. Now, I knew if you'd have asked me back then, am I a drug addict? I would have said yes, but I didn't. My understanding of it's changed as I've worked our program of recovery, and I've spent some time in recovery in the rooms of Cocaine Anonymous. Because back then, for several years, I thought that the problem I had was the drugs I took and the fact I took them every day. And I was physically addicted to the drugs I took. And I always thought if I could remove myself from that, if I could break that kind of day-to-day grind of addiction, then I'd be okay. And I did this many times, okay? Because I am not a tough guy. I'm not a gangster. I'm not a thug. I never went to prison. And I believe we all have different tolerances, okay? And I believe my tolerance to kind of pain and discomfort and the kind of degradation of the lifestyle I led was quite low, because it didn't take much for me to get to a place where I really wanted a bit of help. And I'm very fortunate I got that help from family, from drug services, from rehab. I got help. And I would have certain consequences. A few examples: maybe I wouldn't have anywhere to live, maybe I've been in trouble with the police, and you know, these sort of things. And I would be like, I can't keep going the way I'm going, because I'm not stupid. I knew it was going to end really badly, and I would really mean that I wanted to come off drugs. I would really mean it, and I would make a decision that I was going to stop. And when I had this kind of, when I was in this place and these consequences were coming thick and fast, and I was very desperate and really screaming out for help, I also had hope. I also had some hope, because I firmly believed that if I could get the help, I would be able to go away and I would be able to live my life. And that never happened. That never happened, because I have a mind. I have a mind which is my worst enemy. My worst enemy is my mind. And what happens to me is, after a period of time of not taking any drugs, I start to forget. I start to forget the determination I had to go away and change my life. That starts to taper off. The kind of the hatred of and the fear of the consequences, that starts to taper off. All the promises I made to my family, they get forgotten. Okay. And what happens is, after a period of time, I become absolutely obsessed with the idea of using drugs, because I like them, because I want to feel different. I want a bit of relief from the monotony of my life, you know, whatever reason it is. And my mind will come at me in a million different ways. But I become obsessed with the idea of using drugs. And this obsession grows and grows and grows. And I start to lie to myself, and I start to tell myself that I can get in and out. I can dip my toe in and out of the water, and I can avoid all the consequences that normally come my way as a result of using drugs. And at this point, I'm clean. So it's not like, we talk about that. Once I've used, do I have any control over the amount I take? We're not on that page. I don't have any drugs in my system. Yeah. I'm just looking to get off my nut because I just am. Because I like drugs. I like how they make me feel. Right. And this is incredibly powerful, and I sometimes I was able to fight it for a short period of time, but normally it would win out quite quickly, and I would end up taking drugs. And then that other question comes into play, because once I've taken them, although I strongly believed this time it will be different, this time I'll be able to dip my toe in and out without the consequences, I never could. And what always happened would happen, and I would end up, sometimes it would be very quickly, sometimes it would creep in more gradually over a week or two, but I'd always end up back. And when I ended up back, I used to get to like a point where I gave up fighting, I gave up trying to control it. And then I would be gone again. I would be back to using drugs daily, using hard drugs daily. And then the consequences would begin to pile up again, until I got to that same place of desperation. And then I would repeat the cycle. And I didn't know how to get out of that cycle. Right. So if you're listening to this and you identify with making a real decision, being sick of it, stopping for a period of time and then ending up using again, and then losing control once you do use, and ending up in exactly the same position and repeating that cycle over and over and over again, well, that's what happened to me. Until something changed. Something changed for me. And what changed was, it was another repeat of that cycle. I can remember it very clearly. And what happened for me was, exactly as I just described. But once I'd used, and the same thing had happened very quickly, I very quickly got into, in a matter of weeks, I was in the same place. I was on my knees, desperate for a bit of help. But it was the quickest it had ever happened to me. So that was different. Normally it would take months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, maybe 18 months. This happened extremely quickly. I got to that place of desperation. And when I was on my knees, looking for some help, what I said earlier, about there being, and this only with hindsight I can say this, but what I said earlier about there having a bit of hope, having a belief that if I could go away, if I could break the cycle of addiction, I'd be okay. That hope wasn't there. I didn't know what to do. However, at this point in time, when this happened to me, I have been attending different 12-step fellowships on and off for several years. And I tried all other interventions that are available for people who use drugs like I do have been tried. But I knew that these 12 steps that we speak about in Cocaine Anonymous, this program of recovery, I knew I'd never given it a fair crack of the whip, and I'd seen it work for people that I knew for a fact to be far, I don't like using the word worse, but far kind of worse than me. People I knew from where I lived, people who I knew for a fact had spent many years in prison, many years on the street. I'd seen them get clean through what we do here. And I knew I'd never given this a fair crack of the whip. So I knew this is where I was to come back to. And some things happened. You know, like I said, I've been in meetings on and off for several years at this point. And this time I came back, I was far more serious about it. The idea that I could go out and live my life how I wanted, that I was able to manage things, that was gone the last time round, and I knew it was serious. I was willing to listen. I had an open mind to what was on offer, and I was willing to be honest. And I had this deep down sinking feeling that I was not okay, that things were not going to be okay. And normally, you know, when I came out of a relapse, I normally had a bit of hope, and this time I didn't. And some things happened, and a period of time passed, and I was introduced to our basic text, the big book, the basic text, what the literature we work from in Cocaine Anonymous, and I was taken through a program of action, and it was quick and it was effective. One of the first things we did was I was able to qualify myself as a drug addict. I was able to answer those two questions. And for the first time I saw the problem was not the drugs I used, not the fact I used them every day, because that problem had been solved many times. I'd been able to remove myself from those substances. I realized that my problem was in my mind, and the fact that when I became obsessed with the idea of using drugs, even when I didn't have any drugs in my system, even when I've been clean for a period of time, I didn't seem to be able to have any kind of self-defense against it. I didn't have sufficient power, whether that willpower or, you know, things I learned when I was engaging with drug services or in rehab or things like that. None of these things gave me enough power to stop that from happening, to stop me putting a drug in my system when I was obsessed with the idea of doing it. And I was shown how to get a bit of power. And I was also told that that power, you know, I had a look at my experience, that power, you know, wasn't willpower. I didn't have that. And that as much as many good people tried to help me over the years, I didn't get enough power from them either. That I needed something else. You know, I needed something else. And I was told how to find that. And I went about doing it. And it was quick. Like I said, it was effective. You know, I'm not going to go into too much detail in case there's anyone new, because, you know, you need to do this yourself. You know, if anyone's struggling with addiction out there, my experience of the 12 steps is not going to save anyone else. You know, I had to have an experience myself, and I would wholeheartedly encourage anyone else to do the same. But I did certain things. I was able to qualify myself. I was able to see that I needed a power greater than me, you know, that was not of this earth. I then made a decision to set about getting that, you know, getting that power. I had a look at all the things that made me tick as a human being, my, you know, my human condition, what it is about me that's so problematic, why I do certain things, what, you know, I had a look at all that. I found out the root causes of what makes me tick. I was able to clear away all that, you know. I was able to try and, we call it making amends, but I was able to go out there and try and say sorry to people I'd hurt, pay money back, you know, things like that. Really important stuff. And once all that debris had been cleared away, I was given simple instructions how to live my life on a daily basis, certain things that I had to do in order to get power in my life. Because our literature tells us we need a power by which we can live, you know, because we break the cycle that, you know, we can break the cycle over and over again. Yeah. So it's about what we do once that cycle's broken to stop us picking up again. And I need power. I need a mental defense so that if the idea of using drugs enters my mind, I don't act out on it. I don't act out on it. And I found that power. I found that power. I'm very comfortable today calling that God. And my drug problem was removed quite quickly. My drug problem was removed quite quickly. And the man that took me through the 12 steps, we call it a sponsor, and was my sponsor for several years. He looked me in the eye the day I asked him to sponsor him. And he said to me, if I put half the effort into this program as action as I used to put into using drugs, then I would never have to use drugs again. And that's been my experience. And you know, this program has not been. I've been around a while. I've been around longer than I use drugs. And life happens. Life isn't easy, you know. Life turns up. But through getting connected to this power and staying connected to this power, it's meant that whatever's happened to me during the time I've been drug free, I've remained sane. I've remained clear that using drugs is not the answer to my problems. You know, I've reacted sanely, and if that idea has popped into my head, it's not turned into an obsession that's won out. You know, because I have instructions what to do when that happens, and that is what we promise here. You know, that is what we promise. And loads of good stuff has happened as a result of working the 12 steps, being a member of Cocaine Anonymous. Loads of good stuff happened in my life. I've done stuff that I could never dreamed of doing. I got educated, I learned to drive, I have a career, but lots of bad things have happened as well. I've had job losses, I've had been through a divorce, you know, painful stuff. But when that painful stuff has happened, you know, I've been placed in a position of neutrality, you know, so that I've been safe and protected from what used to happen to me. And for me, that's priceless. And the reason it's priceless is because when I take drugs, you know, when drugs, when I lose that power, you know, as I always used to, when I don't have that power in my life, after a period of time, I always end up picking up. And once I pick up, my life always gets worse, because of the way I use the drugs I use. It always gets worse, never gets better. And yeah, I just want to read something, Paul, if that's okay.
That'd be great, Joe. Yeah.
I just want to read a very quick passage from the first story in our basic text. It is my favorite paragraph in our literature, and it says, if you think you are an atheist, an agnostic, a
Joe,
skeptic.
what page is that on? And I'll put it on the screen.
It's on page 181, Paul.
Right. Nearly there. Hold on. Right.
It says, if you think you are an atheist, an agnostic, a skeptic, or have any other form of intellectual pride which keeps you from accepting what is in this book, I feel sorry for you. If you still think you are strong enough to beat the game alone, that is your affair. But if you really and truly want to quit drinking liquor or using drugs for good and all, and sincerely feel that you must have some help, we know that we have an answer for you. It never fails if you go about it with one half the zeal you have been in the habit of showing when you are getting another drink or drug. Your Heavenly Father will never let you down. So if there's anyone listening to this, and you identify at all with any of the stuff I've said, you know, if you're in that cycle, you can't break it. I would have a few suggestions to you. Maybe you've been around, you've been in the rooms for a while, you're not getting it. You know, get yourself a sponsor, okay? Someone who's been through the 12 steps and has had their own experience. Have an open mind. Try and have an open mind to what's on offer here, and take a leap of faith. You know, what have you got to lose? If you're anything like me, I had nothing to lose and everything to gain. And as a result of working these 12 steps and being involved in the program and the fellowship, I've experienced two things which I never knew before doing this. I've had peace of mind. I've truly known peace of mind, and I've had love in my heart. And those two things are priceless to me. And they are two things that I never experienced prior to working this 12-step program of recovery. So yeah, that's me, Paul.
That was absolutely great. Thank you so much, Joe. You know, I've been privileged to know you now. I was trying to work out, but I think we're into more than 2 years now, or perhaps around that time. But, you know, I've heard you share many times and I love hearing you share. And yeah, what a powerful message. You know, and I remember, you know, from in the past, you've shared your journey, and, you know, naturally speaking, we do have quite a bit in common, actually. You know, I was never a thug or anything like that either. You know, but I did like to use quite a large copious quantity of drugs, Joe. And that became a huge problem, and all the consequences around it. living to use, using to live. Our whole life and thinking was centered in the ways and means to get more. So I was either using or scoping how I could get more money to get more, to use more, or using and planning how I would get more the next day and for the days after that. And then eventually for many of us, we end up in the supply chain, and then we just start using more, and then you end up in the cells, strung out to hell, throwing up, unable to function or think properly, waking up with the shakes. And it's been my experience, Joe, that a heroin addict and an alcoholic are virtually identical in many, many ways in full expression. We have to have a stash for the morning. We will often use before bed and throughout the day, every day. The mental consequences are very similar. Financial consequences, the consequences with family, the employability or unemployability, physical consequences, and just problems. And it was no way to live, and yet we lived like that for a long while, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely, Paul.
So I just share all that for anyone that's just landed on this podcast on YouTube. I'm always conscious that I'm always conscious, Joe. I'll just mute you for a second. There's a bit of. I'm always conscious, Joe, that folks may just land on this and be completely new to recovery. And what we do in 12-step recovery is we meet regularly to carry a message of faith, hope, and courage. Right? We're ordinary folk that have found a way out by grace and mercy, and we meet regularly to share our experience, strength, and hope with one another, to encourage and assure each other on the path of recovery that we can do this together. We are a fellowship, and weeks might pass that we don't talk, Joe, but I'll tell you this. I know that if I needed to talk, you will be in my top half a dozen blokes to ring, right? And that's a fact. And I know that I will get common sense, support, and encouragement, right? And that is the power of the fellowship. Now, temperance societies have been around for hundreds of years. They're nothing new. Societies based on abstinence with principles and literature are nothing new. They're going for hundreds of years, around the world. But I think the power of Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, and Cocaine Anonymous is the connection, the purpose connection expression we have by listening to each other and staying in contact with each other, right? Outside of my using circle, there was really only two realms of contact that concerned me, Joe, where I could get money from and where I could get the gear from. And that was about it, that was about it. Minimal amount of food, of course. And that was it. That's the reality of it. But in recovery, I try and stay connected to folk like you that have found a way out, and you've got a real down-to-earth working knowledge of this program of action. And there's always something to learn. Every day is a school day. I listen, and what I've always appreciated about hearing you is it's always real talk, every syllable, and I relate, and we know how it works. We know how recovery works, Joe. We don't need to, well, I'm not sure how it works, No, we know how it works. There's a whole chapter in the book, how it works. We come along to meetings, we get a support network. We begin to work these 12 steps with a sponsor, and there's 3 podcasts on this channel about sponsorship. What is sponsorship? Am I ready to become a sponsor? And how do I sponsor? So feel free to check those out. Now, you'll encounter a sponsor at a meeting. We'd suggest getting yourself along to a 12-step meeting in your local area, what we call face-to-face meetings. If that's not possible, or you want to supplement that with extra meetings, then Zoom meetings are a great way to go. There are hundreds of Zoom meetings. In fact, I'm led to believe there are many hundreds of CA meetings every single week. I know there's more than about 200, but I'm not sure the exact number, Joe, but there's lots of them. And I don't want any of our listeners to be put off going to a Zoom meeting thinking they'll need to put the camera on. Only about a quarter of attendees put their camera on. There'll be no constraint to put the cameras on, and there's no constraint to even speak. Again, most people will say hello, at the beginning of the meeting, or hello, I'm Jack, I'm in London, for example. But not everyone. But only about a quarter of attendees will share during the meeting, if that. So you're more than welcome to come along and listen to stories just like today's personal story of recovery from active addiction. So with that being said, Joe, in general terms, we talk about getting in touch with the power, and for most of us, that is the creator. But the power of the fellowship, the counsel and wisdom of the rooms suffices abundantly for many people. And people of faith or no faith can get well pretty quickly if they take the suggestions from years of drug abuse, eh?
Yeah, absolutely, they can, Paul. And I've seen people, like I said when I was speaking, I've seen people who have really been to the depths of hell with their drug use, and I've seen them recover in these rooms. I've seen them go from the very bottom to being productive members of society with jobs, being valued family members. I've seen miracles happen in these rooms, and I believe that I'm one of them. And I also believe that what we do here will, and I say with confidence, will work. Will work for anyone listening to, if you put the action in.
Absolutely. So, before we bring things to halt for today, Joe, I'd just like to spend a couple of minutes talking about the attraction of continuing in the fellowship on a regular basis. Once we've got clean, there might be listeners that wonder, why do these folks still carry on coming to meetings? Are we not cured? So I just want to talk about the attraction, to attend regularly to anonymous meetings.
Yeah, absolutely. Quite simply, Paul, I believe what it says in our literature, that by doing what we do, I'm not cured of my drug addiction, but I do have a reprieve. However, that reprieve, that power I get from doing what we do, is temporary, needs to be maintained. And I have seen, as I said in the beginning, I myself, I did not come to my first meeting and get this straight away. It took me a few years. But I have seen, as I'm sure you have, I have seen people go back out the door after many, many years of good recovery, because they stopped doing what we have to do to maintain what we have. And I believe if you speak to any member of Cocaine Anonymous who has been around for a period of time, that they will have either experienced that themselves or they will have seen it happen to others. So the reason I stay is because if I don't, what has always happened to me previously will happen again. And I firmly believe that. And it's that belief that keeps me coming back. I also made I believe I entered into a deal when I took this program of action. And part of that was that I'm able to maintain what I have by being of service to others. This is a spiritual program. This is a spiritual program. And if you come along to one of our meetings, you will hear that spoken about a lot. And the essence of that, in my opinion, is putting the needs of other people before our own needs. Being of service, and helping other people to achieve what we have achieved, which is merely, recovery from drug addiction. So yeah, that is why I keep coming back, Paul.
I heard someone share, Joe, that when anyone reaches out for help, I want the hand of 12-step recovery to be there for them. And I think when you see people get free and stay free and slowly rebuild their life, or at least the parts of their life that can be rebuilt, the reality is some bridges have been burned. But I've seen marriages healed, parents get access to children or get their children out of care. I've seen people become employable or manage to keep their jobs. I've seen people that have been homeless with their legs growing into their socks that they've been wearing for 2 years. The soles of their shoes worn off, living in bin sheds, using, burglaring, mugging, get clear, get a flat, get a car, become employable. And of course, they're outward things, but important things, become responsible, productive members of society. And, although that's an extreme example, I've seen that more than twice, and they're still clean and sober today. Two of them have got a year and 3 months completely clean right now. And many others recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. And so therefore the knowledge, Joe, that this process works, that these steps work, that this literature, this message works and works very, very powerfully. To work towards that, to try and help these men and women and try and carry a message. What better pastime is there to do? You know what I mean? To see them reconciled, and of course, many of them, not everyone sticks around, but sometimes they pop back in the meeting and they're completely different people, transformed persons, and it's just such a blessing. I think, it's such a blessing to see people get free and stay free. So, what I would say to our listeners at this time, before I invite you back in for a minute or two to round things up, Joe, is please come along to a Cocaine Anonymous meeting. Please reach out in the chat. Please check out the other podcasts on this channel. We have a solution. Our message is clear and simple. That any addict can quit using lose the desire to use, and find a new way to live. You know, and in our meetings, you'll hear messages just like today's message, crystal clear, around the clock, in face-to-face and Zoom meetings. So, is there anything you'd like to share with our listeners, Joe?
No, just to kind of double down on what I said at the end of when I was speaking, which is if you know, think about those two questions. You know, when you want to stop using, can you stop entirely? Can you stay stopped? If when you start using, do you have little control over the amount you take? And if you think, that does apply to you, that you can't do either of them things, then come along to a meeting, have an open mind, ask for help, and take a leap of faith. And like I said, I've seen miracles happen in our rooms.
Absolutely. Well, look, thank you so much for coming along today. And in the future, we're going to be doing a series of podcasts with 3 or 4 members discussing different topics, Joe. And I really hope, if we can figure out a mutual time, you would come back and share your message of hope, faith, and courage with our listeners again.
So, a privilege and an honour, Paul. Yes.
Well, that's just great. Well, I'll look forward to that. So, without further ado, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for listening and tuning in. Okay, everybody. Bye for now. Bye now.